Well, good morning, men. It's May the 23rd. And so we turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 23, for God's daily dose of wisdom. And as I was reading through Proverbs 23, verses 1 through 3 jumped up right off the page, and they read like this. When you sit down to dine with a ruler, consider carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you're a man of great appetite. Do not desire his delicacies, for it is deceptive food. Okay, what are you talking about here, Lord? Well, it's obviously a warning. What's interesting is if you flip back just one verse to Proverbs 22:29, the verse right before Proverbs 23:1, we read this: Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. It's almost as if they are tied together here, where the idea of being skilled in your work will bring you before prominent people, that you will not live in obscurity. But then there's this immediate warning that is given when you sit down to dine with a ruler. Consider carefully what is before you. Now, that word ruler, when you sit down to dine with a ruler, that word ruler just means someone in authority, someone who has the ability to impact your life. Could be anybody from your immediate supervisor on a work job, the boss of the company, the owner of the company. Could be a city council person in a local municipality, the mayor of the town or the county that you're in. Could be the governor of the state. Could even be the president of the United States. It doesn't really make any distinction between the level of ruling. It just says when you sit down to dine with a ruler, somebody who has the ability to impact your life. It says, consider carefully what is before you. Put a knife to your throat if you're a man of great appetite. What's he saying there? He's saying, if you're a person who really enjoys eating and drinking, you have great appetites, there's a warning here. He says, do not desire his delicacies. And that word delicacies is simply translated as a tasty morsel. It says, for it is deceptive food. Okay. What he's saying is that oftentimes what happens in situations where you're invited into the presence of a ruler, somebody who has authority over you, oftentimes those meetings are not what they appear to be. There's an ulterior motive behind them. What am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about like something like an office party or a fancy lunch with the boss or any situation where alcohol is involved. And it's interesting because the whole lower section or the whole end section of Proverbs 23 is dedicated to alcohol abuse and what happens when somebody is addicted to alcohol. And so it's not a coincidence that it's kind of bookending the beginning and the end of Proverbs 23 here in regards to the use of alcohol. So any situation where alcohol is involved, office parties, fancy lunches with the boss, various get-togethers with people who might not necessarily be people that you normally hang out with. In other words, if a lower or middle class person was invited to dine with an upper class person for whatever reason, that's the situation that he's warning about. And what he's saying is that oftentimes in these situations, there are ulterior motives and they are attempting to extract information or they're attempting to figure out what your character is like in the context of these office parties or fancy lunches with the boss or something like that. And he's giving us a warning and saying, in those situations, be careful, because this person has the ability to impact your life. So don't go all crazy at the dinner table and start eating a bunch and filling yourself up and just really throwing yourself into the situation. Be careful. Sit back, watch, and discern whether or not there are ulterior motives here. Not all those situations have ulterior motives. Some Situations are just that you've done a great job and the boss wants to invite you out for lunch and treat you to lunch because he thinks you're doing a great job. Those are great. But in those situations, just be careful, be cautious. Isn't that a direct contrast to the Lord's table and what the Lord does with us? The person who has the greatest amount of impact in our lives says, come, take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. No ulterior motives other than our benefit. No desire to try and extract information out of us. He knows us inside and out already. The distinction between the Lord's table and the world's table could not be more stark. And I love the fact that the Lord welcomes all of us to his table, to dine with him, to fellowship with him, to commune with him. My brothers and sisters, I love each and every one of you. I pray that you go out and you make a difference in someone's life today. God bless you.